All right, sorry about that, but we are back now with our introduction to manufacturing processes. So let me go ahead and find where we were. There's the foundry from the current slide. All right, so casting and foundry processes, once again, molten material poured into molds, and then transformed into its desirable shape through that mold. Okay. We talked about multiple use molds and single use. Okay, so the material is heated to a specified temperature. The material is then poured into the mold. Once it solidifies, the mold is removed and the casting is clean, finished, and inspected. Forming and metalworking. All right, so these tubular pipes, okay, they would be drawn. So another thing that would be like wire, cable, things like that. So utilize the material that's been cast, but we modify the shape and size. All right. A company that does this is they use different metals to create wire, and typically for medical purposes and things like that, and that'd be Fort Wayne Metals. So if you want to take a look at their website at some point, it'd be a good point to look at. Rolling is a process where we pass through a series of rollers to reduce the thickness. Okay, so we can do that with bars and turn them into steel plates, or plates used for like metal pressing. And then forging is where we control the application of force through blacksmithing. So think like sword making, swords, axes. Okay. Extrusion, this is where material is compressed and forced through a die to produce a uniform cross-section. So this would be like a tube, or if you want to think of the way that 3D printer filament is made, it would be the same way, the plastic tube. Wire rod and tube drawing, once again. Cold forming and forging, so that would be slugs of materials are squeezed into dies through cold forming. Machine processing would be using some sort of drill or some sort of device to remove materials. Cutting elements, so like a mill, a lathe. Turning processes would be kind of like a lathe, except in this case we may be doing things like creating threading to create cylindrical parts. Lathe, once again. Lathes and turning centers, so we can straight, taper, contour, turning, facing, forming, necking, parting, boring, threading, knurling. It'd be hard to describe all those. The best way to look at that is Google what it is. So what's it mean to knurl when lathing, or thread? Okay, threading is where we create the threads inside of a bolt or on a screw. Milling, okay, this is where we would use cutting tools that rotate kind of like a drill, but then it moves along the X, Y, and Z axis. For example, over here, I'll just move the phone there. That would be the mill right there. And then the lathe is back there, right there. So we'll move this now. So mills do vertical and horizontal, up, down, left, right. Okay, and different types of processes are listed there. Drilling processes are operations that create holes. All right, so some things need holes, and then think of plates that would require a screw later on or a bolt to hold them on. Drilling and boring machines help us do that. So that'd be like a drill or a drill press. Shearing, if any of you have taken classes with Mr. Egley, shearing is where you use pressure and the machine, and it literally kind of like saws through it, but it doesn't use saw, it uses pressure to cut through something, specifically like metal. Think of like the paper cutters, like this paper cutter over there. That paper cutter. Okay. That may have the ability to do that. That'd be shearing paper, not metal though. Abrasive machining, that could be things like belt sanders, spindle disc grinders, things like that. Thermal and chemical processes would be operations that cut and shape materials through chemical means, so no mechanical force is used. Laser. So hopefully by the time you guys are watching this video, we'll actually have the laser cutter, but I'm using other sort of processes to remove material. Grinding, sawing, machining, milling, all right, those are all in there. Heat treating, all right, that's where we actually use controlled heating and cooling to alter a material while maintaining its shape, and this would be for the sole purpose of strengthening something or adding some toughness or corrosion resistance. All right, so that is the purpose of it. To aid in the manufacturing process, materials can be treated, all right, to be weak and ductile, and they can be retreated to provide high strength. So that's why we use heat treating. Joining and assembly processes. Can you think of a product with only one part? I'm sure they're out there, but not typically. We need to join and assemble things together. All right. For example, this is a styrofoam cup. That is one part. Okay. My clipboard, which is over here. Okay, you have the actual wood part, you have the metal here, and then you have the rivets, right? The rivets that actually allow us to fasten it to the board. So that would be a joining and assembling process. And that could be mechanical fastening, soldering, brazing, welding, adhesive bonding, screws, bolts, other types of fasteners like rivets. Okay. Welding is where we literally use heat pressure to permanently join parts, and that you have different types of welding: gas, arc, stud, spot, forge, roll, resistance, induction. All right, there's a lot of them out there. We're not going to get into those really. Just if your product was welded, you'll typically see some sort of weld bead or spot weld mark. Other things like glues, adhesive bonding, thermoplastic, elastomers, things like that. Soldering and brazing, which is kind of like miniature welding, kind of. All right, typically used for more like electrical parts. Rapid prototyping would be the use of the 3D printer. All right, and there's different types of 3D printers, but for the purpose of our classroom, we have fused deposition modeling, or FDM printers. Okay, and that would be the two printers over there. The one on the left was donated by Hoosier Pattern, all right, and the one on the right is a monoprice. Both use PLA, which is polylactic acid, all right, filament. And typically you have other ones that could be used, such as ABS, but ABS is more expensive and requires heated beds to utilize. So for simplicity's sake, we use PLA in this classroom. Okay, there's other ones too out there. This would be like a color solid object printer, so it takes powder and glues it together in layers to create it. Other manufacturing processes include, all right, testing, transportation, material handling, packaging. All of those are required to get a product from point A to point B, all right, and into your home. Material specific manufacturing processes, so you have plastic and ceramic that can be done. For plastic, you can extrude stuff or do molds. Injection molding would be a form. Okay, this is the most widely used high volume production process. Okay, casting, which is plastic is melted and poured into a mold. No pressure is required. Rotational molding is where a closed mold is filled with a predetermined amount of plastic, and then it's rotated and cooled to create a hollow plastic object. Blow molding is a solid bottom hollow tube is placed between two mold halves and heated. The heated tube is then expanded in the sides, compressed air. I don't even know why we cover that. You're not going to see it often. Thermoforming is where plastic sheets are heated over an open mold. All right, and then a vacuum is applied to the mold and it sucks it around it. Okay. Reaction molding is very similar, except you use liquid reactants. no heats required. Ceramic manufacturing, all right, you have crystalline ceramics, so the material is shaped then heated. Okay. Typical product cost breakdown, if that looks familiar, once again, manufacturing cost comes out to about 40%. And with that, the whole purpose of that was just to give you a brief overview. None of this really goes into detail. Okay. If you want more information, find what term you're looking for, look it up. I'm sure there's plenty out there for you. And then the assignment, once again, is to investigate the processes used to create the component that you chose at the end of the last activity. And then create some sort of PowerPoint or electronic presentation, electronic illustration to use that. And then make sure you cite your sources. So if you have any questions, make sure you talk to the sub. Work together to help each other, but you're going to work in the same groups that you were in the last assignment. So with that, have a good day, and toodles, y'all.